Nobody in Hollywood history has made powerful people more uncomfortable in public, on camera, on live television, in front of their own peers, than these two men. One of them was invited.
No position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg.
The room didn't know whether to laugh or confess. And then he said this.
Just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up. I know he's your friend, but I don't care.
Your friend? Not a criminal you heard about, not a predator in the news, your friend. And the other man, the one who wasn't invited, the one the industry spent 30 years trying to silence?
Named 6 names. One of them who's still very powerful to
6 names. One of them is still shaking hands at premieres right now. And here's what nobody is connecting. These two men never sat in the same room. They never coordinated. They never planned a single thing together. But for over 3 decades, they have been making the most powerful people in Hollywood cry, sweat, laugh nervously, and leave the country. This is how they did it. The comedian and the child star walk into Hollywood. Let's set the scene. It's January 2020, the Golden Globe Awards, the most powerful room in the entertainment industry. Studio heads, A-list actors, network executives, people whose phone calls can greenlight a movie or end a career before lunch. And standing at the podium, uninvited to behave, is Ricky Gervais. Now, if you only know Gervais from The Office, you might think this was just another edgy comedy bit, shock value, trolling for headlines. But if you watch that speech knowing what we know now, knowing what was already in those Epstein files, knowing what Corey Feldman had been screaming about for 30 years, knowing what was about to explode with the Diddy case, the Nickelodeon documentary, the quiet unraveling of Hollywood's most protected secrets, that speech doesn't read like comedy anymore. It reads like a deposition.
Talking of all you perverts, it was a big year. It was a big year for movies. Surviving R. Kelly, Leaving Neverland, 2 Popes.
He called them perverts to their faces on live television while they held their drinks. And in the same breath, he linked their industry's biggest award show to Surviving R. Kelly and Leaving Neverland, 2 of the most devastating documentaries ever made. He wasn't doing crowd work. He was doing a roll call. But here's the thing about Ricky Gervais that most people miss when they talk about that night. He wasn't the first person in that building to say something. He wasn't even the loudest voice over the previous decade. He was just the one that the cameras couldn't cut away from. Because across town, for 30 years, Corey Feldman had been saying the exact same things, different platform, different decade, different method, but the same truth. Let's go back, way back, to understand why Feldman's voice was so inconvenient and why Gervais' joke landed so hard. The 1980s was sold to the public as the golden age of the child star. And from the outside, it looked exactly like that. E.T., The Goonies, Stand By Me. Kids were at the center of Hollywood's biggest cultural moments. Audiences loved them. Parents trusted the machine that produced them. But Feldman was inside that machine.
the circle of older men, and they all had either their own power or connections to great power that surrounded themselves around this group of kids.
Widespread. That word is doing a lot of work. Because what Feldman is not describing is one bad actor who slipped through the cracks. He is describing an ecosystem. Agents, managers, producers, the gatekeepers who were supposed to protect young talent were instead the ones controlling the access. They ran the auditions. They held the career opportunities. They kept parents at a distance. And they told those parents that distance was just how the industry worked, and they told the kids the same thing.
Oh yeah, I was surrounded by them. They were everywhere like vultures.
He was 14. He didn't fully understand what was happening to him. That's not naivety. That's exactly how these systems work. They depend on the victim being too young, too dependent, and too isolated to understand or report what's being done to them. And the people in that circle, they counted on it. Now, cut back to Ricky Gervais, because what makes that Golden Globe speech so remarkable, beyond the audacity of it, beyond the sheer bravado of a man standing in front of people who could end careers and calling them out, is that he wasn't guessing.
In this room are some of the most important TV and film executives in the world, people from every background, but they all have one thing in common. They're all terrified of Ronan Farrow.
Terrified of Ronan Farrow, the man who broke the Weinstein story, the man who had been systematically digging through Hollywood's most protected secrets and printing what he found. Gervais told the entire room on live television that a journalist who exposed predators made all of them nervous. Think about what that implies. If you have nothing to hide, you're not terrified of a journalist. You might be annoyed, you might roll your eyes, but you're not terrified. Gervais was telling us and telling them that the people in that room had reasons to be afraid, and he said it as a punchline, because a punchline is the one format you can't sue for defamation. What Corey Feldman was actually carrying. To understand why Corey Feldman kept talking, why he spent 3 decades being dismissed, discredited, called unstable, called a has-been, called delusional, you have to understand what he was carrying. And the center of what he was carrying wasn't his own story. It was his best friend's. Corey Haim and Corey Feldman, the two Coreys, teen heartthrobs, box office gold. And behind that, two kids being circled by adults who had total access and zero accountability. Haim started drinking during the filming of Lucas. He was a teenager. And according to Feldman, something happened to Haim on that same film that would shape the rest of his short life.
As a little boy, and he told me that, it was his co-star. And he told me that it was Charlie Sheen.
He didn't just tell Feldman. According to accounts from people close to Haim, he told this story to multiple people over the years. A dozen people in their circle had heard the same account. It wasn't a buried secret. It was common knowledge. Everybody knew and nobody did anything. That sentence is more disturbing than almost anything else in the story because it means the silence wasn't an accident. It wasn't oversight. It was a choice made over and over again by person after person who decided that their position in the industry mattered more than protecting a child. Haim's addiction went from alcohol to marijuana to crack cocaine. By 18, he was in rehab. He became, in his own words, a chronic relapser. He died on March 10th, 2010. He was 38 years old. The official cause of death was pneumonia. Feldman believes, and it's genuinely difficult to argue with him, that the childhood trauma and the addiction it triggered were the real cause. The paperwork said pneumonia, but the story started on a movie set when Haim was 13, and Feldman made a promise to his dead best friend that he would keep talking, so he did. He went on national television. He went on The View. He went in front of Barbara Walters, one of the most powerful women in American media, and he said it.
I'm saying that there are people that were the people that did this to both me and Corey that are still working. They're still out there.
Still out there, still working. And what did Barbara Walters, the icon, the legend, the journalist of record, say to a man describing child on live television?
Careful what you wish for. That's what I'll tell you. Don't go into it with naivety. Don't go into it thinking that it's all roses and sunglasses.
Be careful what you wish for. Not, that's brave of you. Not, we should investigate. Not, who are these people? Be careful what you wish for. Because the usual playbook, discredit the accuser, bury the story, make it about the messenger, doesn't work when the messenger is Ricky Gervais, standing at your own podium with a microphone and a captive audience of millions. What happened the night Feldman's film almost reached the world. In March of 2020, just weeks after Gervais' Golden Globes speech, Corey Feldman was ready. He had spent 3 years making a documentary. He'd put in $1.3 million of his own money. He'd gathered witnesses. He'd compiled accounts. He'd named names. 400 people packed into a screening in Los Angeles, standing room only. The plan was to stream the film worldwide simultaneously with the premiere, the moment Feldman had been building toward for 3 decades. 15 minutes in, he came sprinting down the aisle, flanked by security guards. He grabbed the microphone. The website had crashed.
Oh yeah, I was surrounded by them. They were everywhere like vultures.
Was it sabotage? Was it just a traffic overload from too many people trying to tune in at once? Nobody has proven either way. But here's what we do know. A man who had been systematically dismissed, discredited, and pressured to stay silent for 30 years, a man who had spent his own money, his own time, his own credibility, was finally about to show his evidence to the world. And at the exact moment it was supposed to reach millions, it stopped. That's a fact. What caused it is the question. And that question, the unanswered question, is itself part of the pattern. Because here's what makes this story bigger than just Feldman or Gervais or Haim or any single person. It's the pattern. The same names appear across completely separate investigations, separate decades, separate industries.
Year 2000, I was taken to Jeffrey Epstein's island while on a photo shoot on a nearby island. Who I saw and what I experienced there was a glimpse into a very dark and disturbing world.
Epstein's reach went to the very top of fashion, arts, and entertainment. And what Feldman has been describing, the circle, the handlers, the infrastructure of access and silence, maps structurally onto what the Epstein case exposed. Same architecture, same language, access, silence, normalization, a network of powerful people who created environments where exploitation could happen and continue happening because everyone with the power to stop it had too much to lose. The people who made the rooms feel safe. This is where it gets darker, because the story was never just about predators. Predators are the obvious part, the part that gets prosecuted eventually, if at all. The harder story, the story that Feldman and Elijah Wood have been trying to tell, is about the handlers, the people who didn't commit the acts themselves, but who made the acts possible, who opened the doors, who provided cover, who created environments of false safety that victims walked into willingly, because the person standing at the entrance was someone they trusted completely.
When Katie met Harvey, she met Harvey with Oprah. She talks about the fact that if Oprah's with Harvey, then why should I worry about it? I mean, Oprah is like the world's mom.
The world's mom. Think about what that means as a mechanism, not as a personal attack on any individual, but as a function. If you position yourself as the ultimate symbol of safety, of truth, of women's empowerment, then your presence at an event, in a room, beside a person, becomes a seal of approval, a permission slip, a signal to anyone watching that this is safe, this is legitimate, this person is good. That's not friendship, that's infrastructure. And Elijah Wood, the kid from Lord of the Rings, a man who had no personal trauma claim, a man who said he was protected but saw what happened to others. Elijah Wood used a very specific word when he described what he witnessed in Hollywood.
There are a lot of vipers in this industry, people who only have their own interests in mind.
Vipers, not predators, not bad people. Vipers, cold-blooded, patient, calculating, hiding in plain sight. And he didn't stop there. He made a comparison that, if you understand what he was saying, is one of the most chilling things any public figure has said about Hollywood in modern memory. He compared the unnamed abusers to Jimmy Savile. For those who don't know that name, Savile was a British DJ and television personality who spent more than 4 decades abusing victims while everyone around him, the BBC, the British establishment, the charities he ran, the hospitals he raised money for, either looked away or actively covered for him. His crimes didn't come out while he was alive. They came out after he died, after he couldn't be prosecuted, after the window for real justice had closed forever. Wood made that comparison deliberately. He was telling us, in the clearest possible terms, that history is repeating itself, that the same machinery of silence that protected Savile for 40 years is operating right now in Hollywood. And Corey Feldman has been saying exactly that since 1993.
Every time somebody tries to bring up a public name and they have a lot of money and power and a publicity machine behind them, the person who does the accusing is the one that ends up looking bad.
That's the trap. That's the mechanism. Accuse someone powerful and you become the story. You become the crazy one, the attention seeker, the damaged child star who never got over it. Meanwhile, the powerful person issues a vague statement. Their PR team goes to work. Within a news cycle, the whole thing has evaporated. And the cracks are showing in the most revealing place possible. Geography.
Ellen DeGeneres is in the UK and reportedly cannot be served legal papers because she's overseas. Richard Gere sold his Connecticut estate at a loss, a multi-millionaire taking less money than his property was worth because he needed to move quickly.
A multi-millionaire taking less money than his property is worth because he needed to move quickly. Rosie O'Donnell moved to Ireland and said publicly she will never return to the United States. Never. That's not a political statement. That's not a lifestyle choice. That's a person calculating risk and deciding that the calculation doesn't favor staying. Eva Longoria slashed the price on her Beverly Hills mansion. These are not people who are struggling financially. These are people who, for some reason, need to be somewhere else in a hurry, and the timing isn't random. It aligns directly with the release of the Epstein files. Over 150 names in sealed court documents connected to the Epstein case. And somewhere in Hollywood right now, people who know their names are on that list are watching the calendar.
President Trump, what are you trying to hide? If the administration withholds some documents unlawfully, we will know. If they abuse narrow exemptions to hide the truth, we will know. And there will be serious legal and political consequences.
The survivors deserve the truth. The American people are demanding it. And the Epstein survivors themselves, the people who lived through it, who know the names from experience rather than from documents, they've said something that should make every powerful person in Hollywood very uncomfortable.
The Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know.
The survivors know the names, not from files, not from documents, from memory. And Feldman's response to all of this, to being asked whether the Epstein reckoning gives him hope, was one word, one by one. Not all at once, not in one explosive revelation. Case by case, name by name. Cosby, Weinstein, R. Kelly, Quiet on Set, Diddy, and now the Epstein files, one by one. What Feldman and Wood are building. So let's talk about what's actually happening right now, because this is the part of the story that most coverage is missing. Corey Feldman has stated publicly, clearly, consistently, repeatedly, that he can name 6 people directly connected to the abuse network that destroyed Corey Haim, that surrounded child stars in the 1980s, that is structurally identical to what the Epstein investigation has been exposing.
He named 6 names One of them who is still very powerful.
One of them is still very powerful, not retired, not disgraced, not dead, active, working, respected, photographed at industry events, shaking hands at premieres, and Elijah Wood is now standing next to Feldman. Now, Wood was careful. He didn't name names directly, but his language was deliberate in a way that tells you everything. He said he was lucky to have a mother who protected him from what others experienced.
Wood said he was lucky to have a mom who protected him from abuse, but added, "I've been led down dark paths to realize that these things probably are still happening."
Still happening. Present tense. This is not a historical scandal Elijah Wood is describing. This is ongoing. But when Elijah Wood, a man with no personal trauma claim, a man whose career is intact, a man the public instinctively trusts, stands next to Corey Feldman and says, yes, this is real, yes, it is ongoing, yes, these people are still in power, the isolation strategy collapses.
We are most certainly at the precipice of the battle of good and evil, and that's the way I see it.
Not just Hollywood, Washington, it's everywhere.
No, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I think for the first time, we are truly seeing evil reveal itself.
The precipice. That's the word he chose. Not the end, not the resolution, the precipice. The moment just before the fall or the breakthrough. They issue a statement through their PR team. They give a carefully worded interview. They do a soft sit down with someone they trust. Someone like, say, a media personality who will throw them a lifeline and not a hard question.
Hello? Sarah! Hi, Oprah! Hey, I'm calling to welcome you to the United States.
That warmth, that camera-ready warmth served a function. Gervais puts them in a room with no PR team, no prepared statement, no sympathetic interviewer, just a microphone, a live audience of millions, and a man who is going to say the quiet part loud whether they like it or not. And what do? You can't walk out. That's an admission. You can't confront him. That's an admission. So you laugh. You sit in your expensive outfit and you laugh at the joke that is about you, and you pray that the camera doesn't catch the moment your smile doesn't reach your eyes. And Corey Feldman makes powerful people cry for the opposite reason. Not because he strips away the performance, but because he refuses to stop performing the truth. 30 years of being dismissed, 30 years of being called crazy, 30 years of having his credibility methodically dismantled by an industry that understood correctly that if he ever got enough people to really listen, the entire architecture of their protection would come down.
It was one of the most heinous, horrendous, horrible receptions of a cry for help that I've ever seen in my life, and Hollywood should be ashamed of it.
Hollywood should be ashamed. Not just the predators, not just the handlers, Hollywood, the whole machine. Every executive who heard what was happening and filed it away, every journalist who covered the story and buried the lead, every celebrity who sat in those rooms and went home and said nothing. Feldman didn't have Gervais' armor of comedy. He didn't have Wood's mainstream credibility. He had a dead best friend and a promise and a refusal to let that promise go quiet. And powerful people hate that most of all, because you can discredit a crazy person. You can dismiss an attention seeker, but you cannot dismiss a man who has been saying the same thing for 30 years, who has watched his prediction come true, case by case by case, who spent his own money to make a documentary that mysteriously crashed on its premiere night, and who is still talking.
There are thousands of people out there, Matt, who have this information.
Why always him? Because the thousands of other people who had the same information decided that knowing wasn't the same as doing, and for 30 years, Corey Feldman carried the weight of both. The dam is cracking. So here's where we are. The Epstein files are being unsealed. The Diddy case cracked the surface of what industry parties actually looked like behind closed doors. The Nickelodeon documentary showed the world that the 1990s child star system had the same architecture as the 1980s one. A survivor coalition is compiling its own list of names, not from documents, from memory. Celebrities are leaving the country, and two men, one who stood at a Golden Globe podium and called the most powerful room in Hollywood perverts to their faces, and one who has been screaming into a media machine for 30 years, are watching everything they said come true. The silence is breaking. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Which man do you think has been more effective at making Hollywood uncomfortable? The comedian with the microphone or the child star who refused to stop talking? And do you think we are actually at the precipice? Subscribe if you're not already, because this story is not done. Not even close.